I bet you didn't know that one of the most important tools of the 1940s wasn't a weapon or a ration tin. Before we dive in, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a story like this. The real battlefield was the silent, anxious kitchen. And the mission? Turning locked-away calories into life day after day when every other system failed. If your vision of wartime prep is only about what soldiers carried, you're missing the entire home front, the real long war where endurance was measured in harvests and hand-turned gears. This is for the history buff who digs past the headlines, and for the realist who knows that survival is often a quiet, grinding discipline. Today we're pulling a legend out of the shadows, the hand-crank grain mill of the World War era. This isn't a relic. It's a time-tested blueprint for absolute food independence, proven under conditions we can scarcely imagine. We romanticize victory gardens, but we often miss the stark reality behind them. During both World Wars, but especially World War II, the global and domestic supply chain wasn't just strained, it was commandeered. Rail lines were prioritized for troops and munitions. Fuel was rationed and funneled to the front. Commercial flour production was centralized, vulnerable, and subject to interruption. Imported food could be sunk in the Atlantic. For families, particularly in rural areas and across occupied Europe, this meant a brutal truth. If you couldn't source it locally or you couldn't process it yourself, you simply went without. Flour, the absolute staple, became a potential point of failure. Pre-ground flour spoils, attracts pests, and goes stale. But whole grain, wheat, rye, oats, can be stored for years in a cool, dry, rodent-proof environment. The problem and the solution hinged on one tool, a device that could transform that durable grain into edible food, without a single volt of electricity or a drop of gasoline. This machine embodied an engineering philosophy forgotten in the age of convenience. When you find a genuine 1940s-era grain mill, its weight is the first thing you notice. That heft isn't clumsy, it's intentional. These were not novelty items. Cast iron frames, dampened vibration, and, well, lasted generations. Hardened steel burrs were machined for efficiency and longevity, not for the high-speed abrasion of modern electric models. Every component, from the adjustable grind setting to the crank handle, was designed under one rather brutal manufacturer's assumption. This product will be used hard repaired by its owner with simple tools and, honestly, must not fail. In an age of scarcity, factories simply couldn't afford recalls or warranties. Failure at home could mean hunger, so they overbuilt. They used materials that could tolerate neglect, moisture, and constant use. There were no plastic gears to strip, no electric motors to burn out. The entire mechanism could be understood, disassembled, and reassembled by anyone with, just basic mechanical intuition. This wasn't just a tool, it was decentralized, resilient infrastructure sitting right there on a kitchen counter. Processing calories was a daily act of defiance and ingenuity. The hand mill's role went far beyond just making flour for bread, though that was its primary mission. With an adjustable grind, a single family could use it for multiple survival tasks. A coarse setting produced meal for porridge or polenta. A slightly finer crack could prepare grain for livestock feed, a critical function when concentrated feeds were unavailable. And when times got truly tight, as they did across Europe and even in stretches of Depression-era America, these mills processed anything that could be dried and would yield nutrition. Dried peas and beans, acorns leached of their tannins, even roasted root vegetables were ground to extend precious flour supplies. This wasn't fringe experimentation. It was standard practice knowledge. The mill ensured that whatever hard, durable calories you had stored could be rendered edible. It turned passive storage into active nourishment, and in doing so it returned a vital measure of control to people who had little control over the wider collapsing world. Identifying and restoring a true wartime-era mill requires a discerning eye. If you're hunting for one of these workhorses at an estate sale, in a barn or online, you must discern the genuine article from later, flimsier reproductions. Weight and sound are your first clues. A true period mill feels substantial and dense. If you tap the frame, cast iron should give a dull, low thunk, not a thin, hollow ring. The burrs should be cast steel, not aluminum or, any cheap composite. Check the adjustment mechanism. It should be robust, often a large threaded screw, and it should move smoothly, even if it's a bit stiff from old grease. Crucially, avoid the temptation to over-restore a mill you find. This is where, honestly, well-meaning enthusiasts can ruin a perfect tool. The burrs are not meant to be razor-sharp like a knife. They are precision-machined grinding surfaces. Sandblasting or aggressive wire-wheeling destroys their carefully engineered geometry. Historically, maintenance was gentle. Rust was removed with a vinegar soak and a soft brass brush. Moving parts were lubricated with minute amounts of food-safe oil, and the grinding surfaces were seasoned and cleaned by running a handful of dry, non-oily grain through them. This respectful approach is why so many of these units are still fully functional 8 decades later. The ultimate survival takeaway is a system, not just an artifact. The profound lesson for us today isn't merely to acquire an old mill as a curio. It's to understand and replicate the system it enabled. The mill was the keystone of a triad durable whole grain in sealed storage, the mechanical means to process it, and a heat source, like a simple wood-fired oven or stove, to bake it. Together, these elements form a closed-loop food preparation system that is immune to grid failure, fuel shortages, beyond scavenged wood, and supply chain collapse. It has no perishable parts. In a prolonged crisis, while others are guarding cans of beans or waiting in line for government flour, the owner of this system is producing fresh, nutritious bread independently. One person with a properly set mill can grind enough flour for a family's daily loaf in under 15 minutes of steady cranking, a fact that made the difference between sustenance and hunger for millions. This is the gritty, unglamorous truth of survival history. The greatest threats aren't always met with a gun. They are often met with a slow, turning crank and the quiet certainty of self-reliance. The engineers and families of the World War era left us a masterclass in resilient design. They built for the certainty of hardship, and in doing so, they built for the ages. If this deep dive into practical, proven history resonates with you, then you're in the right place. Help us keep this knowledge alive and in the hands of those who value it. Subscribe to Warfront Survival, hit that notification bell, and share this video with someone who understands that true preparedness is built on the lessons of those who have already walked through the fire.